Yo folks, and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we'll be covering Artery Gear Fusion tier list. Also remember, waifu over meta. Do not let my video hinder you from loving your waifu. Tier lists are just for convenience and you can make your waifu great with enough imagination. By the way, we'll also be running a giveaway for today's video, so leave a comment down below. I'll select a winner for $25 and let's jump right into this. So first, tier list is going to be Artery Gear info, and of course huge thank yous to Antiller, Chihuahua, Hollow, Infrared Shadow, Tamias, Volgardi, and Yuki. Tamias in particular already has a video on this, so feel free to check out his, but I'm going to provide my thoughts as well. We'll cover the JP tier list a little bit later, not to mention their reroll tier list in JP, and then the reroll guides in comparison from arterygear.info, and then we'll also talk about some thoughts about some other units that I found interesting over my research on these tier lists. So first unit being is Alice right here. What makes her so great? Because everyone talks about her like she is the next coming of Jesus. And guess what? She really is. First things being is we're going to slow down time right here. You can cast her skill 1. It looks pretty beautiful. But most importantly, this skill right here, if you highlight it, it increases action bar. So you can push a random ally. Obviously, it won't work right now because we don't have any allies around us. And then her skill 2, or her active skill, it requires an ally to be there to proc it. You can't proc it, but this will push someone straight into action. So it'll be like, hey, I need someone else to do an attack. And Alice will be like, all right, do your attack. I'm gonna push you forward. Imagine that was a different unit. Imagination. Anyways, this is gonna be her special skill or ultimate skill right here. It provides a slow, which I think is really good. And just for animation's sake, so you guys can see it while I talk about her, she is one of those units that can be put on any team. She might fall off a little in PvP just because, you know, extra turn mechanics, she might be too slow and all these sorts of things, but she's just going to be available for PvE. Not to mention she's a blue unit, and blue units are just rock solid in the current meta. So that's the first unit that you can look at right there. Next unit is going to be Ginga. Now, a lot of people are recommending her. Her kit is a little bit weird, but let's go ahead and take a look at her skills so you can see what she is all about. So her S1 is going to be providing electrical shock, which is really good. That's a debuff that she's going to need in order for her to really get her damage off. You can see they have 2 shocks right here, which is really good. And if you look at her skill 2, if the unit already has shocks, then she will deal a follow-up 100% damage. And she is just a shock queen. If you see right here, there's going to be the animations. They do a little ping pong tennis action right here, and she'll do another attack, and she just dealt some crazy amounts of damage. And then her special or ultimate skill right here will deal even further damage, and for every debuff the target has, the more damage this attack will deal. So let's go ahead and proc it right here on this unit and watch how much damage this does. This is what makes Ginga so great. It's not the fact that, you know, she can do the shock damage, it's the fact that she can apply debuffs and then use other people's debuffs to make herself even better. And this unit's practically dead, and within no time, look at that. Oh, they're immune to shock, so it doesn't really matter. That's kind of interesting. And let's see how much this skill 2 does with the amount of shocks that's applied to this enemy, and do the ping pong actions. Oh my gosh, that is a lot. 1350, and then she'll proc it again, and she'll hit a different unit. I didn't know that. So there you go, Ginga being an absolute monster. And there's so many reasons why I love her. She'll fall off eventually just because there's going to be other varieties for doing debuffs, but she'll be a queen forever in Centaur. Just note that. Next up, we have Morris right here, the best healer in the game. Even though she's red, she's still going to be amazing because of her kit. Let's look at it. Her S1 is going to be accuracy reduction, nothing special there. Her S2 is where things get spicy. She gets a 30% action bar bonus to the ally who gets the heal, so that you can push someone forward in their turn rotation. And then you also grant rejuvenation to the ally for 2 turns, so they get a heal over time. And honestly, it's really cool because if you cast it on maximum, or at least the 3-tier upgrades, it'll be on a 1-turn cooldown, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then you can also cast her S3, which is a full heal towards everyone. And it also provides removal of all debuffs. And look at how short the cooldown is for this skill. So after everyone gets healed and they get all their debuffs removed, it is only going to be on a 3-turn cooldown. You can do shenanigans where you spam your S2 and then your S3, But honestly, it's more recommended that you do your S3 first and then you do your S2s, because that way you're gonna have easier time rotating your heals a little bit better. But it's up to you at the end of the day. Use what you need to use. In case you need to push an ally, then use the S2. But if you want to remove all debuffs and everyone's taking a lot of heat, then use this one. She's also pretty tanky. The only issue is, of course, that her being red, she's gonna get a lot of damage taken to her by the blue units. All right, let's cover the last SS tier unit, Sirius, right here, and talk about why she is so amazing. If you look at the gameplay, you can see this is going to be her. Her skill 1 is pretty phenomenal. It doesn't matter too much at the very beginning. We'll talk about it why. But her skill 2 right here is really amazing. If she grants a crit, she can get a speed bonus and also do a bonus turn. So let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and see it right here. She gets the little crits off, and now we'll get an extra turn speed up. By the way, you don't need a crit for the speed up portion. And then let's cast her skill 3 right here, and this scales on speed. Also looks pretty phenomenal. And what's really nice is, I think if you have a crit on this, obviously it will do a lot more damage, and it looks really insane. How much damage can we actually get off right here? And just note, these units are already at level 60, so they're maxed out. So I think 2017, and then you cast her skill 1, which will make it so that she will grant herself another speed boost, and of course apply some defense reduction. So there you go. She is an absolute powerhouse. And then we can use her skill 2 again. There's only going to be a 1-turn cooldown on her skill 3 by the time this is up. So you can cast her skill 1 once again, and remember that was an extra turn. And then finally you can cast her skill 3. So her kit is just uncomparable to any other unit in the game, because the amount of unit skill spam that she can apply herself without the help of Alice or any other unit is just insane. The only thing that's sort of holding her back is that she doesn't have like AoE cleave capabilities, but her single target damage is kind of comparable to no one else in the current game. So those are going to be the SS tier units, the first 4. We're not going to be covering everyone else as much detail, but man, they are just so amazing. Next one is Grace. What makes her really great is the fact that her skill 2 right here has crit chance, which makes it so that she can spam her abilities with lots of crits. So what's cool is that this ability right here, if you trigger a kill, then it'll go off cooldown, which is really nice. And then her free firing ability, if it's a crit, then she will reduce her cooldown by 1 round. So what happens is she's gonna cast White Phosphorus Bomb. If she manages to get a kill, it'll reset her cooldown. And then someone like Alice can push her back in the front with her, Judgment by Day Clock, which is really cool. And then what happens is Grace can cast it once again if she gets a kill. If not, she can get her skill 1, lower her cooldown a little bit further, and it'll make her AoE just highly spammable. And the fact that her crit chance is just constantly proccing will make this even more viable. Obviously, the only downside is she's 3-star, so she's not going to be dealing that much damage. But hey, for a 3-star blue unit, that's absolutely phenomenal. Next one is Rory right here. You could say she is a better version of Grace in some ways, mostly because her skill 2 ignores elemental disadvantage, and if she kills someone, she will reduce her skill cooldown by 1 round. But also, her skill 3 right here is really phenomenal. Damages everyone. If she gets 2 crits off, then she grants herself an extra turn and attack buff. So what happens is you cast her skill 3, and then you cast her skill 2, and then she will deal a metric ton of damage. And if you're feeling up to it, I guess you could use like Grace as another unit, and you can spam her like skill 3 right here, and then you can have someone like Morris, or not Morris, you have someone like Alice come back, push someone in the forward sections, and have it so that Grace or Rory is going to be spamming one of their abilities if they're off cooldown. If Alice resets someone's cooldown, like their skill cooldown, that would be absolutely insane. But you can see how Grace and Rory are just really crazy for cleave mechanics, because they are able to deal so much AoE damage and grant themselves extra turns. Well, specifically Rory, not Grace, but their AoEs are just insane, just to say the least. Next up, we have Roko's, which I think is really crazy for a 3-star unit, mostly because she has this corrosion ability. So let's go ahead and take a look at Roko right here. So her first ability is going to be granting some corrosion, and what you do, you grant some corrosion on her skill 1, and then you will use her skill 3, because this will also provide some more corrosions. And you can technically like cast her corrosion special skill first, this one in particular. She's like a little scorpion bouncing everywhere, digging the grounds, and just pretty much styling on him. And then you can use this ability, her skill 2, which will extend the corrosion effects. And this will pair with Gingo really greatly because the debuffs will just keep going. And as you can see here, the corrosion is based off of enemy HP, so the ticks will get larger and larger, and while she's not dealing that much damage herself, the corrosion is dealing a lot of damage against the enemies, and so long as she's stacking those corrosions and just making them last longer, the enemy just has no chance, and they're just gonna be sitting like little duckies watching their HP go down. So Roko is a phenomenal unit that's not worth re-rolling for, but definitely someone to look into in case you're looking for a more budget style unit that can deal some damage in the early game. Then you also have someone like Serial. They are the burn queens, so you can cast their skill 2, cast their skill 3, and she will just be doing massive amounts of burns. 4 burns on just one skill. It's on a 4-turn cooldown, but hey, 4 burns is really insane. And then she can use her Grim Reaper, and when an enemy is killed, they restore 20% HP based off of the target's maximum 8 health for all allies targets. So she can be somewhat of a healer in some ways as well, or I guess somewhat of a bruiser, but in all honesty, her being able to cast burns is really insane, and she'll pair with someone like Ginga very well. Ginga exists and is a much better version, but hey, Serial's just going to be much better in the later game when other units will vie off of her burn ability right here. Next unit we have to cover is Quinn right here. I can't showcase her skills, but we can talk about her all day. Now the reason that makes her so special is the fact that Battle Command right here is going to be granting greater speed buff to herself. She's going to lower her cooldown by 1 round, so it's going to be on a 3-turn cooldown. Greater speed buff is going to be really good because she's going to get her turn rotations a little bit faster. And not to mention, she has guided missile, which will do AoE damage to everyone and repelling everyone's action bar. So you can push everyone back. And not to mention, every point of speed will let her get more damage off of her AoE ability on her S3. So in some ways, she's going to be really great for PvP just because of this A rating, don't doubt it. Her PvE rating, of course, is going to be phenomenal for Centaur. Centaur is going to be the fire boss, right? And then, of course, her S1 is just going to be a anti-heal, which is nice, of course, in case you're dealing with enemies who are super tanky. For example, in PvP, you might be able to stop someone like Morris, but Morris has like that debuff removal on her S3. So that's a little bit annoying. I don't know if that can really affect anything. But I would say Quinn is definitely a solid unit just for her speed mechanics and being able to deal somewhat decent damage overall. But I think it's mostly her cleave potential and her future unique equipment that'll make it really great. But she's also one of the few units that can provide a free attack buff and speed buff for the whole entire team. Next up, we have Chihaya on the S tier. She's going to be your budget Sirius in some ways, mostly because her capabilities allow her to do, a crit strike, and then she'll reduce her skills by 1 round, her cooldown specifically, but her ultimate skill will actually be a crit strike as well, and she can grant herself an extra turn with that capability. So what you do the skill 3s, and then you do the skill 2s right here, and you do the skill 1s, and by then she'll be dealing a lot of damage. The only difference is she's going to be a blue unit, so it's not going to deal as much damage, for example, as Sirius, who's a green unit, and you're dealing, damage to someone who's blue. But the thing is, Chihaya is going to be really good at Centaur as well. So she could pair someone with like Ginga in some ways a little bit better. And technically speaking, you don't want to use Sirius for Centaur or the speed set farming area, because she's going to be green and she's not going to be dealing as much damage, and she's going to be more of a hindrance than an actual viability like the way Chihaya is. Not to mention, you should farm Chihaya right now because you need to wait 6 months in case you don't farm the event, but make sure to do the event in order to get this unit because she's one of the best. Next up, we have Milvis right here. You could say she is the red version of Grace or Ruri, more like Ruri in some regards, except she is going to be 5-star and she deals a metric ton of damage. Her skill here is a laceration. It ignores elemental disadvantage, and if she kills someone, it goes off cooldown, which is really good. Probably the best version of a red unit that could do this, and technically speaking, she can hit more damage than Grace and Ruri combined, just because of the fact with enough gear at 5 stars, it's just going to be really crazy because she can ignore elemental disadvantage, like I said. She has the greatest possibility to cleave like blue teams, green teams, or any team in particular. Not to mention on Raptor's Trial, you can also do a defense down, which is really crazy. You might be able to get a paralysis off, but the biggest thing is you can do Raptor's Trial first, And then you can have someone like Alice boost her back in the forefront, and then Milvis will come back and do a laceration to kill them off, reset her cooldown, and do another laceration. So there's a lot of mischievous things that you can do with Milvis. The only thing is she's not like Grace, who has natural crit bonus, so she's not going to be critting like crazy. As you can see right here, gear dependent, but once she has the gear, she's going to be outclassing every single unit as far as AoE cleave comps are concerned. So let's go ahead and cover the last S tier unit, Shura, right here. She is going to be pretty good as a single target DPS for red units in particular. You can cast her skill 2 first, which will provide some defense down. Also, it scales off of maximum HP a little bit. And then you can cast her skill 3, which will provide some attack downs. If she's in Shura mode, I believe she'll deal a little bit more damage, which is really cool. And yeah, that is going to be her bread and butter. So skill 2, and then you have someone like Alice push her back into the forefront, and then she'll use her skill 3 to finish them off. If they're not completely dead yet, then you can use her skill 1 once she is back on her turn, and she'll be dealing significant single target damage. The only thing with her is that she doesn't have like the AoE cleave capability like the way Milvis can do it as a red unit. And not to mention, Grace and Ruri just have the AoE cleave. And AoE cleave is just so addicting, single target damage, when you can't reset your own cooldown and grant extra turns like the way Sirius can. And if she could do that as a red unit, then she would be absolutely amazing. Just a couple of things before we cover the other JP tier list, right? So if you actually look on my Google spreadsheets, you can see these 3 units are the best cleavers in the entire game. And one thing to note is that there's no green cleave in the entire game, which is a little bit weird. If you actually look at all the different units that are green, you will see that most of the tanks and healers are the ones that are highly viable. Their PvP rating is not that great. And the reason for that is because they do not have the capabilities to deal high damage within like their own kits. Benny might be able to do it, but it's super niche. She requires like a dual strike and some weird triggers. So she has a lot of caveats in order for her to hit PvP rating A. Phantom is the only one that's capable to do it because she can grant speed buffs, which is really good. And a lot of her damage scales around speed. And Alice paired with her will just make her a little bit better. So if you want to run like a mono single target green team, you can pair Alice and then Sirius and then Phantom together, and they'll just be running amok when people are trying to run like Grace or Ruri. But once stall comes start popping up like teams with just Morris and then Hirin and then someone Bella, then that's going to be really annoying because you can't really stop them. They're just going to be constantly healing and tanking, and you'll never be able to kill them within like their defense comp. So watch out for that, in my opinion. But the fact that green units just don't have that capability like the way like red and blue units have, I feel like they get the ultimate shaft. And you have someone like Cindy right here who looks really cool as like this spider like lolly thing, right? Her siege form and her capability, it's on an 8-turn cooldown. Sure, you can get it down to a 7-turn cooldown like this, but the thing is how is that worth it compared to someone like Sirius who can just spam single target abilities and just deal so much more damage? They really need to figure out what they want for these green units, or I'm assuming they're going to release better green units in the future, but I just wish they didn't get a shaft. Let's go ahead and jump into the JP tier so we can cover some more things. When it comes to this, a lot of the same units are going to be at the top. They do have Shura on the same tier as someone like Sirius and Alice, and these 2 units right here, they're not available to us just yet. And their explanations for Shura is because her firepower is relatively high and her performance combines offense and defense. She's a jack of all trades, a master of none. She can tank, she can do defense down, and she can single attack. I guess that's right because Sirius is a little bit more squishy. She can provide some defense down, but she's not as tanky. And of course, Alice is just going to be a straight up support, and more, she's just healed. So that's her viability in that regard. Of course, there's going to be other evaluations in case you guys want to look at like future units that are going to be viable. I recommend checking out Tomias's guide because he talks about it. Also, we have Atelier's Ryza that's going to be here. That's going to be, I believe, tanky-ish or DPS unit. So that's going to be cool. And Milvis right here and Ginga as well in the S tier. So a little bit different in some regards, but I definitely respect this JP tier list because it provides explanations. But it's fairly similar to this tier list right here, in case you're wondering. The only difference probably is the fact that Ginga is an SS tier, but that's just because she can deal high single target damage. and she'll be outclassed in the future like we talked about, with other units being better at the single target damage. And then we have the reroll tier list right here. Now what's interesting of course is they rate Shura very highly once again, and they actually put Alice relatively low. But the thing is you have to really look at the description. The only reason why they're down here is because they're 4 stars. These are actually really good units, and they're only covering these ones right here because they're 5-star. So in some ways, they're like S tier 4 stars. I guess like that's just the way they have it rated for this reroll tier list. But yeah, fairly interesting right there. Don't misread it. I know you can misread it just by being like, oh no, Alice is B tier. No, it's just because she's 4-star. I just wanted to clear that up for this one in case people look at this one. And then lastly, of course, the Artery Gear reroll guide. Everyone like Sirius and Alice, these are SS tier. You can see their ratings. And of course, the other units that are highly viable, but sort of niche in some ways. Like for example, Kana and Foxy, they're super niche to their PvE areas. And Taimi's super niche for PvP, but she's really cool. If you haven't looked at her kit, she's the person that can boost action bar. So, and she's stupidly fast. You just have her run a speed set, you boost your units, you have someone Alice go next, and then you boost someone like Sirius, and then you go crazy with green abilities, or you boost someone like Grace or Ruri and they do cleave comps, or you can boost someone like Milvis if you're a whale and you have like Laceration Cannon or Raptor's Trial ready to just like wreak havoc on everyone. But yeah, it's just really crazy how you can get all these different units paired up together and just run absolute madness within the game. And I think that's where Artery Gear Fusion really shines, is the fact that there's so many capabilities where you can do extra turn action bar manipulations with Alice and Sirius, and Morris just having that infinite heal capabilities. It'll provide really different team comps, and this is why it gets compared to Epic 7 and Summoners Wars, because their kits are really good. Not green units, they get shafted, except for Sirius, like we talked about earlier. Anyways, if you made it this far in today's video, consider subscribing, dropping a like, leaving a comment, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, of course, in case you want to see my face. But most of all, if you guys have any corrections or you want to say, hey, this unit is really good down in the comments, I would actually really appreciate that, because you guys like just commenting on the videos and talking about a hidden unit, and it really helps out a lot of people, because there's only so much research that I can do. There's only so much I can read before I could possibly release like the most definitive info. And of course, all these tier lists aren't definitive. They're absolute convenience like I talked about earlier. But with that, thanks so much. Have yourself a fantastic day. And remember, waifu over meta.